Hi, I'm Bob Coates, and I'm a Texas school instructor for 2026. And my class is nature, macro, floral, landscape, and animal photography. Man, that's a lot of subjects. You know what? We also throw in a lot of bit of creative Photoshop as well. But what I've been asked to do is just give you some tips. When you're photographing animals, one of the best things you can do is learn their behavior and anticipate changes. When they're sitting there and they're, just before they fly or just before they change expression, or but you don't get that by just, sitting there and, running in with your camera and starting to take pictures. You need to spend time and, watch and observe and be patient. And but we don't always get a chance to go out and do that in the wild. So where can we practice this stuff? Well, how about at the zoo? When you get to the zoo, though, you run into some problems like what? Oh, you got fences and glass and distance and stuff. So how do we fight some of that stuff? Well, the biggest and best tool in our toolbox, that would be the long lens. And the faster that glass is, the better. But at the very least, a long lens will really help you a lot. And a long lens will allow you to reach into the enclosures, those safari areas and stuff, and be able to fill your frame with your subject. If you don't have that long lens, you're just going to get this little teeny tiny little thing. And yes, you can watch and you can observe, but you're not going to be able to really practice. So the idea is to keep watching. And now this guy here is his name is One, and he's from the Phoenix Zoo. And I spent a lot of time hanging out with One and watching him and seeing what he's doing. And once I finally got to a certain point, I was looking for something, and then one day I looked and I was able to create this portrait. You're not going to get this by just running and gunning and getting out to the zoo and saying, "Oh, look, there's." Spend time, learn, practice. There's another guy that was right next door. That's a mandrill. He's got a little different problem because a lot of times he's behind glass, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. So that long lens enables you to get out. These guys were probably 50, 75 yards away from where I was. And yeah, it's a nice little grouping right there. We have a group of three, nice composition. But what if we add a little bit of behavior? And the turtle on the left is doing a little bit of lecture there. If you don't spend time watching, then you're not going to catch moments like this. And of course, how do you know and predict when the bird is going to kind of run off and do things like that? So the whole idea is to spend more time. And the more time you spend, the better you're going to do. What's the next problem we really run into is glass. There's a lot of glass in between you and your targets. So to beat the glass, again, the long lens can help, but also getting your glass of your lens right up next to the glass of the where you're trying to shoot through, that will take away a lot of stuff. Use your body to block the light and the glare. Use the angle of reflectance and the angle of, anyway, you want to make sure that you can do your best. But in something like this, where you have an orangutan behind, that 3/4 inch bulletproof glass, which is really green. I mean, look at the color there. But what can we do? We can do a conversion to black and white and do some processing and do some dodging and burning. And how do we do that? That's in Photoshop with layers. And look at the difference between A and B. Kind of nice. You can do some good stuff even through that glass. More glass. But when you're looking through, again, this lens is right up next to or very close. They also make, the one other thing you can do is you can get there's glass rubber brackets that you can put over your lens that will block all the light if you can put your lens up. These are really great for aquariums because then you don't have to have your lens right on the glass because they kind of frown on that, but it does block all the light. In this particular case, we've got this guy back there, and we can look through, no reflections. We can capture our subjects and be able to observe them. The one other thing that you're going to have is fences. Oh my goodness, lots of fences and nets and things like that. How do we beat the fence? Back to that long lens. This is what you see if you if you focus on the lens. If you look at that little shadow area behind, that's our subject. I'd rather see him. We get close to the fence with the lens, very shallow depth of field, wide open aperture, and look, we can make that fence pretty much disappear. There was a little bit of Photoshop done to take away a little bit of that ghosting fence, but no problem to be able to get your subject. Through a netting. Again, same type of thing. You can see the kind of netting in the background there. But once we've gone through that netting and captured our subject, we can go into Photoshop and do a little playing and add a different background and have some fun. This guy was behind a fence and it was a little difficult to get him going. But after a little while, just kind of observed and watched and ended up with this kind of a portrait. So this is the kind of thing you can do if you take your time, use the proper tools, and get out there. It's going to help your wildlife photography a lot. It's also going to give you a lot of practice with that patience. I hope you got some help from these tips, and hopefully I'll see you in Texas school.